Switch to Verizon Business and get more from your internet without paying more for your internet. Get LTE Business Internet starting at $39 a month when paired with select business mobile plans. That's unlimited data, and with it, unlimited possibilities. Start saving today with Verizon Business, ranked #1 in small business internet customer satisfaction by J.D. Power. Starting price for 25 megabits per second LTE internet plan with smartphone plan savings, plus taxes, fees, and economic adjustment charge. Terms apply. For J.D. Power 2024 award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Whatever the occasion, effortless elegance is right this way. Because Hilton brings you new ways to stay courtesy of the Nomad London. And it doesn't stop at award-winning dining in a space draped in velvet and illuminated by vintage chandeliers. No, this day goes beyond with unparalleled personalized service and attentive hospitality. Oh, and did we mention the Nomad London can be booked using your Hilton Honors points at Hilton.com? Hilton, for the stay.
Welcome, Sophie, to Nature Pact.
Hi.
Let's start off with Ecosia. Could you briefly explain what Ecosia is, what its mission, and what do you exactly do there?
Yeah, absolutely. So Ecosia is known more widely as the search engine that plants trees, or the search engine that dedicates 100% of its profits to fighting climate change. So that's what we do. Our mission has always been from the inception, really, of Ecosia, nearly 15 years ago, or about 15 years ago now, to reforest the planet. That is our goal. That's what we do every day as a team. That's what we strive for. And we're not doing too badly. We have a long way to go. We've planted over 228 million trees, so that's awesome. Thanks to our users who diligently use Ecosia and help us get to our goals. But as you know, I mean, we're not there yet on the climate front, and we have a lot to do, more so than just planting trees, in fact, which is why actually we've expanded our mission to include other forms of climate action over the years. But nonetheless, the core principle remains that we give away our profits to fight the climate emergency and the nature crisis as well. In terms of my role, so I'm the head of global public policy. I'm also the head of the UK and the Americas. So my role there is basically twofold. On the policy side, I mean, I already mentioned that we're a search engine with an environmental mission. So therefore, there is a lot of tech policy that happens from the search engine side. As you can imagine, and as you've seen in the news over recent years, this is a really interesting area and a lot of movement happening right now. We're a challenger search engine in the space. We are the largest European-born search engine, and therefore a lot of the time is spent talking to whether it's the EU in Brussels or other member states. And I should say we're born from Berlin in Germany, so the German government and others talking about tech regulation and how do we make this a fairer space. So there's that side of the search piece, the search engine. And then on the other side in policy, there's us as actually one of the largest funders of reforestation projects in the world. So inherently, that means that we have to be part of the climate and nature discussions. There's no point in us planting all these trees if we're not also looking to change the system to address fundamental issues which cause the deforestation of those trees in the first place. So we're very active in those spaces, and that activity can be, yes, at the EU level as well. It can be more global at the COPs, the conferences of the parties, either for climate or for biodiversity that happen, because of course we plant in so many different countries, about 35 to 40 different countries at any given time. So our impact is global by nature, but we also work very locally in our core markets. Our core markets are the places where we have the highest numbers of our users. So Germany, as I mentioned, is our home base, France as well, the UK and the US, but also across Europe. We have a lot of European users more broadly. And for us, that local action, that's the kind of policy action, but also local campaigning happens here at home a lot in Europe. So that's that role. And as I mentioned, UK and US, I'm based in London. The rest of the company is really based in Berlin, but the UK is an important market for us, and as is North America. So my goal and my role here is really to manage this market and help it grow, and support our partners here on the ground to make an impact from a systemic level as well.
What's the kind of, if you put all the profits into forestation, is it more like an NGO or is it the company?
we're a company, we're a for-profit company. However, we are putting this, I guess, model on its head, and we have been active as well on the business side, trying to encourage new ways of kind of designating business, I suppose. And I should say, I mean, kind of anecdotally, I mean, the premise of this was really to demonstrate that business can be profitable and scalable, right? Whilst doing good for the planet. And I think we've demonstrated that, right? I mean, obviously, our market share, I mean, we have just short of 20 million users around the world. Our turnover and revenue is all in our, we publish it on our financial reports page. And you can see that it's a modest amount. I mean, it's quite a few million a year, nothing in comparison to the big tech companies, but still significant. So I think we've absolutely demonstrated the case that business can be profitable and do fundamentally good work for people and planet. And so that was the idea. And so for that reason, yes, we are for profit, but we give all the profits away.
I mean, that happens to many other companies also, only that the profits go into the billionaires' pockets or something like that. The probably, people listening think, okay, search engine and money for the nature. Where does the search engine make its money from? Do you sell the first page like Google does, or how does it work?
Yeah, that's right. So at the moment, most search engines, in fact, I'd say all of them have the same business model, right? It's not a perfect world. We still depend on kind of advertising revenue to monetize search. And that's what Ecosia does do. So we take an imperfect model and then we try to perfect it into something that is as good as possible by giving those profits away, as I mentioned. But yes, indeed, like the money that any search engine would make from somebody clicking on an ad, in this case for us, goes into climate action, which is why it's really important for us to try to encourage as many people to use Ecosia at this time for the planet, right? Because we need as much of that investment at the moment going into climate and nature. But that's, unfortunately, there is a kind of a paradox here, which is the fact that, people are clicking on ads typically to consume something, right? And in this case, we're using it for good. So we're turning that on its head. However, of course, the idea is that people would consume less, and that would be one of the better or a good solution, at least, to the climate crisis as well.
I was just reading today about the Hague case where they have banned the fossil fuel advertising, and Dutch whatever the trade organizations have taken them to court for the ban. It's something rather similar, right? I mean, the controversies about the advertising revenues and doing something good with it. It comes from many different colors.
Absolutely, and actually, we do try to explain and educate our users about what's happening and where we generate our profits from, certainly. But when they use the search engine, we do have a kind of a feature whereby you can see whether or not the company that is coming up, if you type in oil and gas, for example, into the search engine, you will see that some of these companies that you mentioned, who may well have been involved in the case in The Hague, will have next to them a polluter signal or image rather, and that shows that they are on the coal exit list, and we consider them to be polluters, heavy polluters, big polluters, and therefore we kind of call that out as much as possible. There is a limit to what we can do on our search engine page in terms of some of these things, but we definitely want to highlight that there are some companies that are doing kind of more damage to the environment than good. And so we have those images, those kind of little symbols for those companies. And then for those who are doing a lot of good for the planet, maybe they're part of the B Corp movement or other movements, we have a little green leaf. So it's our way of kind of signaling to the user that this company is more aligned with Ecosia's values, perhaps, than one that is not.
You have recently reported decent or good growth numbers for the kind of ethical search activities, but I mean, it's still rather tiny, right, compared to Google or even with some other global search engines.
In terms of the recent numbers, or in general?
In general, I mean.
Yeah. I mean, as I mentioned, we have around 20 million users, right? Just shy of at the moment. And that is small, right? Google and other companies have significant resources to invest in search, and also AI topics and things like that they're able to integrate into their services, of course. And the reality is that the search market has been rather static for the last, 10, 15 years, let's say.
Since Internet Explorer died,
exactly right, and we've had a kind of a monopoly there, which has dominated the space. So we're in a market where it's difficult to break in, and the brand recognition of other companies, like let's say Google, for example, is so strong that even when you're there providing a different offering, in this case providing a very green offering, people are still like, well, they might want to use it, but they might not know how to change their search engine, either on their phone or on the desktop in the first place, and also may just end up switching back, even if they're kind of curious about another search engine. And so some of our work with the EU, for example, on the digital policy side, has really been about how do we open up the ecosystem around search? How do we encourage, or like I said, kind of a fairer search market? But also, how do we kind of structurally allow people to make a choice on their phone or on their desktop that reflects their values? Maybe you want more privacy, for example. Maybe you do want a greener option. Maybe it's something else that you're looking for. There are increasing numbers of different types of search engines that you can choose from, if only you had that visibility and that moment to be able to pick an alternative. And in the EU, there was the rollout of the choice screen. I don't know if you saw after the decision in 2018 against Google, and that's something that we've been active on. And that means that now people, Europeans who are on their phones, get a new Android phone and also iOS, can pick their browser when they're setting up the phone, and also at other moments. And they can have a think about, like, what kind of values do I believe in and what do I want on my phone? And that's really, really important. Maybe we'll come to it later, but the state of the world that we're in requires us, or, means that we can take, or we could also take action in the digital realm as much as in person, right? There is so much of our time spent online. And therefore, we need to think carefully about what we're choosing when we click on certain things, when we dismiss cookies, for example, when we select different options. And sometimes you can see that there are inequities there, sometimes bias, sometimes lack of information. And the user very quickly is pulled into an ecosystem that they didn't realize how difficult it would be to get out of, or how few choices exist there. So with this work with the EU, we've been able to help to roll out the choice screen, and we see positive responses there. But as you say, in terms of numbers, yes, of course, it's still minuscule in comparison to some of the bigger tech players. But it's not nothing. And with that not nothing, we've been able to do something when it comes to tree planting, deforestation.
Is anyone out there?
Another salesperson enduring the endless search. Exhausting. If you want to get right to the right conversations, you need LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Whether you're looking for new leads or strengthening existing relationships at your top accounts, get right to the right conversations with LinkedIn Sales Navigator. Try LinkedIn Sales Navigator now with a free 60-day trial at linkedin.com/trial. That's linkedin.com/trial.
Terms and conditions apply!
Are your business expenses playing hide and seek? With Uber for Business, the small spends that slip through the cracks, like rides and meals, go right where you need them. Because it integrates with leading expense platforms, you can say goodbye to surprise costs, missing dollars, or chasing receipts. Everything's track downable. Uber for Business. Make small steps that make a big impact. Learn more at uber.com/small steps.
About the doing something, how do you choose, who plants the trees where? Do you have the team days when you go to the, unplanted forest and go and plant those trees, or how does it happen?
Oh, so this is a very core part. Again, I mean, this is fundamental to the mission from day one. We've been very diligent with who we work with in terms of partners on the ground. So I mentioned we're in over 35 countries, almost up to 40 countries now around the world. And the mission of Ecosia was to start the reforesting of the planet in the places where the trees are most needed. So those are biodiversity hotspots around the world. And if we lose those hotspots, or if we lose the biodiversity in those hotspots, it's very difficult to kind of get that back, and also it has implications on the rest of the planet. So we focus there. We focus in that belt, largely in the kind of the tropics, the Sahel region, for example, as well, which is experiencing increasing desertification further north and further south. We focus on these places which are also quite often underfunded. So fewer projects, let's say, in Europe and the US. Although the US also needs more support now, but the places where it's sometimes harder to get that money into the ground, right? So this could be, as I mentioned, all across the Sahel, whether it's Burkina Faso, Cameroon, Mali, Senegal, this whole belt here. And then also a lot in Latin America, in Asia. These are places where we mainly focus. And we work with partners that we've been working with together for a very long time. We also onboard new partners. They have to meet a very high standard. We have some of the highest standards of tree planting in the world. And on that, we recently launched with Kew Gardens and the Jane Goodall Institute, the Global Biodiversity Standard. We launched that at the last Biodiversity UN conference. And that's really to raise the bar of the standards of tree planting. There was a big flurry of people of companies doing tree planting and carbon offsetting, this kind of thing, a few years ago. We need lots of solutions for the climate crisis, but they must, when it comes to living forests and habitats, they must meet a high standard because there are people who are affected, and also nature and other living beings. So we need to make sure those forests are not monocultures, that they are biodiverse. They're using native species, and they're really benefiting the local people as well, so as to ensure the longevity of those trees, right? So we always talk about the right tree in the right place.
Mm. It must be the old business journalist in me who's kicking in now. But how is the AI having an impact on all of this? I mean, I've seen a lot of headlines about how the old search engines are losing their business to their AI models, that people are turning to the language models for their search of the best solutions for their whatever they are buying. From one side, and from the other side, of course, all those AI models and all those power plants which are being built to run them. I mean, it must be, we could probably speak hours about that, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think this is the question on everyone's lips at the moment, right? I mean, AI is the biggest disruption to the search market that we've seen in recent years. It means it's a hugely exciting time on the technological development side for everyone, right? I mean, everyone can see the benefit of suddenly you can do things in a few minutes or a few seconds that took people hours. So there's certain kind of benefits there that we understand our users are interested in tapping into, right? To help them with their work, their studies, whatever. So we absolutely have a commitment to be user focused in terms of what it is our users are after, how we can help them in their life, in their day-to-day life, because that's what a search engine is. How can we get the information to them as soon as possible? And how do we then balance that with our ecological footprint and our values? Now, that's the harder part, right? Because as you say, all of these data centers require such vast amounts of energy and water at a time when we need to be actually kind of scaling back on a lot of these things. In our work, we are 200% carbon positive. In the sense that we use solar power to power our servers, and actually, when you use Ecosia, you're taking energy. You're putting energy back into the grid, green energy back into the grid. So, from an infrastructure perspective, this is a really key question for us. What more do we need to do to improve on that side of things if we're going to integrate more AI? Right now, we have very kind of baseline, I would say, AI integration, and what can we do to make sure that our users are getting the best experience? In terms of the wider aspect, I mean, we campaign in this space because it's important to us. It's something that we will continue to kind of engage on from an environmental perspective, making sure we find solutions to this issue, and that we hold large polluters to account as well. And this will go also for data centers to some degree, because it's one of the big kind of strategic issues of our time.
What does every USAA member have in common? Family. We're one big family who supports the military community and their eligible families. And if you, your parent, or spouse served, you could join our family and save big on auto insurance. Visit USAA.com/join today to check your eligibility. Membership eligibility and product restrictions apply and are subject to change. USAA means United Services Automobile Association and its affiliates, San Antonio, Texas.
Not all EVs are created equal. The Ioniq 9 sets a new standard. Hyundai's first all-electric EV with 3 rows. Space in an EV, finally. Plus, with over 300 miles of range, ultra-fast charging capability, and tech infused with safety features, this isn't just space. It's freedom reimagined. More room, more possibilities. Learn more about the Ioniq 9 at HyundaiUSA.com. Call 562-314-4603 for complete details.
Absolutely. And the do you think this kind of the recent ethical search surge could be linked to the AI, or what could be on the background kind of reasoning?
So yes, we've experienced a large number of new users coming to Ecosia in recent months. I think people are looking for alternatives to some of the big tech players. As I mentioned before, people are looking to connect their values that they feel strongly about in real life with their online choices, and that's a wonderful thing. I think that's something that people need to feel that they can do more and interrogate more about what their choices are online. So people, of course, come to Ecosia perhaps because they'll see that we are quite the opposite of some of the large tech models, right? Whereas some people are amassing huge fortunes, which they're investing into multiple ventures that could do much more to benefit life on Earth as opposed to going up to space. I think that this surge is definitely part of a rethinking of where people dedicate their time and therefore their data, and who ends up with that profit in terms of data that can then be turned into other money, basically, for individuals or other kind of ventures which may or may not benefit people's day to day.
Going ahead, what's next for Ecosia? What are the kind of the key growth plans? How do you get this 20 to 200?
Yeah, that's it. That's definitely something that we're always thinking about, right? I think in terms of immediate growth plans, I mean, we have to, as you say, kind of really marry that desire for people to have high-level products that work efficiently and compete with AI, or are indeed AI based, to our users. So the product side is continuing to innovate and continuing to make sure that we meet our users' needs. On the other side, I think the climate crisis and what we see day to day on the news, it shows that this is really real, and we need to do more, not less, at this important time to fight climate change. So those two things together, innovation and the mission, and getting that story out to as many people as possible is really key. Now, we have a really big challenge, which is misinformation around the climate, or purposeful kind of de-ranking, I would say, of climate issues, whether it's in the media or social media, that kind of thing. A lot of people in kind of positions of power no longer want to prioritize this issue. And that's a really big issue right now for all of us at this critical time for the planet. But it's a big problem for Ecosia that we want to try and solve. So we want to give people more information about the climate, but also reach new audiences. So in terms of growth, there's a lot of people who don't necessarily associate themselves with being the greenest, individuals on the planet, but they might by now kind of understand that there are some important aspects related to the climate and things that they can do to from their phone to contribute to that. So we want to keep making sure that we give people an easy, free way to be climate active every day. And so that's the kind of message that we're going to continue to share with people. So yeah, like I said, that means like reaching out to audiences who are not just the green audiences, but every sector of society who feels that this is something that should already be mainstream by now, and they want to do something easy from their phone.
And the beauty, of course, is that the kind of simplicity. It's just swapping the browser. It's not like spending your days in a forest planting them. Somebody else does that work for you.
We'll do that for you, exactly.
What's the message to the kind of, I don't know, average consumer like me who runs this, records this podcast over browser on Vivaldi, but has also Google Chrome and Safari in this laptop? Why would I need a fourth one? Or should I replace one of them with Ecosia?
I think you should absolutely replace one of them with Ecosia. Absolutely. Please do.
Which one?
Oh, well, I mean, you can download the Ecosia browser on your desktop or your phone. You could also make Ecosia the search engine on another browser. So whichever you prefer, we'd be delighted to have you as a user. I think, like, as I said, I mean, in terms of a kind of a message for people, I think at this time, in terms of where we're at as a planet, but also kind of from the democracy level. I mean, one of the things I didn't mention before is European kind of digital sovereignty. But, I think that we need to vote with our feet, but online as much as possible, right? Hope is a wonderful thing that we absolutely must hold on to, but sometimes we also have to take action. I always like saying action is the antidote to despair. And as I said before, so much of our lives is now digital. So let's take that action online. Ecosia, downloading Ecosia, which is how I came to find out about Ecosia over 6 years ago now. I wanted to kind of, take action online, and I looked for something which turned out to be Ecosia, And so I think that this is a wonderful way to feel like you're part of something, to join a community that is genuinely using tech for good and genuinely prioritizing people and planet over profit. And I think that's such a stark kind of comparison to what we're seeing by some of the other companies right now. And I really wish that they would also take a leaf out of our book and dedicate more of their profits to fighting the planet, fighting the climate crisis, so that we can all get through this together.
Okay, I will start off from adding Ecosia browser Ecosia search to one of the browsers first, but then we'll continue from there to the browser if I love the results, right?
Please do, yeah.
Good. Thank you for this discussion, Sophie.
Yes, well, thank you. It's lovely to speak with you.
If you like the show, subscribe and leave a good rating on the podcast platform of your choice. It would mean a world to us.
Electricast.